more down-to-earth reality of different scientific institutions. Basically, to put it very simply, no matter what we do, what kind of institutions we use and what kind of incentivization, there will always be the risks that the associated parties will choose to not conform with the demands of open science, whatever is asked from them. It might be the case that they might even use the incentives that are in place to actually hijack the open science movement for their own personal agendas or even distort it. Okay, so this is just a little bit of a personal take on this based on a number of observations and examples and my reading of the literature. So to these risks on the movement of open science, what really makes things very difficult is how exactly do you define open science. Different parties might want to interpret it in ways that are convenient for them to show that they are helping open science, but in essence, what we truly would like to mean by open science might not be really advanced by what they are doing. So, of course, there are many definitions. Different organizations have different definitions. The EU has its own, UNESCO, and so on and so forth. For my personal point of view, a very simple and basic definition would be that it is a set of practices that promote the dissemination and verification of scientific knowledge. So, a set of practices that allow for the sharing of information. What is the point of sharing? Not just common knowledge, but also activities to confirm, scrutinize, and verify. Okay, so just focusing again in this very short presentation on three particular actors, I want to just make a few points. Obviously, some of the most important actors are academic researchers and publishers, and since yesterday there was also the workshop on industry and open science, I also added a couple of slides on them as actors and what open science would mean with their participation. So, for academics, okay, obviously we know that for more than a decade there have been an effort to convince them to share openly data, codes, material necessary not just for learning what they did, but for verifying and reproducing the results. And I want to go back increasingly there. Okay? The notion of scrutiny is very crucial in science. Okay? So, as I would just point, and it is relatively well known, several initiatives, including of course COARA, which we know so well, wants to push the fraction of researchers who adhere to principles of open science, but just a small number. I'm not going to give a lot of numbers in this presentation. In fact, the sharing of raw data, something really fundamental in the biggest discipline of biomedicine worldwide, can be shown that the sharing has increased in the last decade or so after these incentivization efforts from less than 1% to about 20%. But still, there is a lot more progress to be made. And of course, things started with DORA, Leiden Manifesto, then COARA is incorporating this. This is just a little bit of a summary of the Hong Kong principles that followed the DORA movement, okay? And it is about how to incentivize open science, assess researchers on the basis of open practices, not just volume of publications. Okay, so this is just several principles about how to reward open science practices. However, what we see, this is also reflected obviously in COARA and in the EU statements that what is desired is to bring down barriers, developing incentives and enabling data-intensive science and massive knowledge sharing, as well as promoting a scientific approach of public debate. Okay, these are relatively well known, but I want to make a point here. So when you have Quora and you want to incorporate its principles as a whole institution, let's say university, things might get complex. Why? Because you have a large number of disciplines that might be heterogeneous. So those are general principles about openness. Okay, what does openness mean for biomedicine versus social sciences versus humanities versus history and similar domains? So when you try to actually follow the incentivization requirements, then you might face particular difficulties. You might have feelings of opposition to this because people researchers might feel disproportionately affected. So there might be feelings of injustice in the sense that if you now impose principles of transparency on me, on our discipline, then we're going to have a very high cost in terms of time. Other disciplines might have much less in that regard. So what are you really doing? Are you trying to increase the workload for our discipline, and what do you do for others? So this kind of considerations are important when you're looking in terms of an institution, but in terms of a discipline too. So in my field of experimental economics, we are in the process of writing a relevant paper here addressing arguments about these opposition to incentives for open science and best practices for reproducibility. Of course, personally, I don't have much sympathy for these arguments, but oftentimes they are put on the table and they affect behavior quite significantly. So this is something to keep in mind in the future in terms of, for instance, adjusting, when we change incentives, adjusting the workload as well. Potentially for disciplines that require greater adjustment in terms of putting resources for open science and documentation, for instance, maybe adjustment in terms of the number of outputs should be made to account for this. Secondly, so this is some considerations about incentivizing open science for researchers. What is the role of publishers now? And how can things go wrong a little bit with publishers and open science? Okay, obviously we know that what we wanted a couple of decades ago is open access, widely accessible to all, fast publication process, where you don't have endless revisions to distort everything, and we would all like to see this happening. Well, now it is happening. It is happening quite a bit, but unfortunately, it has not happened in a way that it is very positive for science. So oftentimes, I go back to the issue of incentives and policies. Sometimes things can backfire and can work in different ways that you expected. So publishers have done these things that, if you wish, we ask from them, but in ways that serve their own agendas, in ways that might not be good for the spirit of open science. So, we have another paper that we discuss about this, but to put it very simply, what does open access available to all means when you have thousands of euros charges? Is this really open access? And then definitely we have achieved principles of faster dissemination and faster review processes. But what happens to quality? Yesterday I received a review request from a paper from a journal. Let me not give that many details. Rather respectable, at least it had a very famous name in the beginning, one of the journals that associate with some of the very famous publishers, but it was in biomedicine, and it wasn't a complete joke. So you would say, if these guys, they are so desperate to find reviewers, if they have such a volume, they need to make decisions so fast, they end up being so casual in the referee process. How can one trust the quality of applications there when they ask for an economist who has close to zero idea from biomedicine to referee for biomedicine journals? So again, this thing can backfire when open sciences can be hijacked. And the ultimate question is, okay, we have open access, but do we have more scrutiny ultimately? So this is another concern. And obviously we have to wrap up now, but for industry, I'm far from a specialist in private sector innovation and development. So I followed yesterday's workshop with a lot of interest. In some sense, for me, it's like trying to do the impossible, trying to walk on water, having a private industry research and at the same time trying to make it open. So, I don't know, it seems to be a little bit like a publicity stunt to some degree. Maybe I'm a little bit not fair there. But let me just share a small story. My longtime collaborator, Johnny Ioannidis, pinpointed the problem in one of the private unicorns, pharmaceutical companies in the US, saying that they argue for very important scientific discoveries, but nothing is published in the peer-reviewed literature. That company was Theranos, a very famous company that was condemned for fraud, where basically, without any reason, John kind of, suspected that this is not a good thing. So we arguing in terms of what you do as a company for important scientific advances in the complete lack of peer review. It just didn't seem to be, fitting in place that well. Again, I don't have a general take on that. But for this particular case, this criticism was vindicated in the sense that one needs to wonder about the importance of peer review scrutiny when private research argues about important advances in science, especially in the domain of biomedicine. Okay, so these are just a few simple thoughts. Open science is a fantastic idea to promote better, faster scientific discovery, more scrutiny. It is very difficult to operationalize because of the incentives involved, but of course it's so important to continue this discourse of trying to find ways and institutions to work on it. And again, the key word always is unintended consequences. So when we work with social structures, it is very difficult to predict what might happen. So I apologize a little bit for this short and not very structured discussion, but these were my 2 cents for today.
because the biggest advantage that they can probably have in today's state of development of the economy and of technological solution is time. So if you are faster than the others because you collaborate, that's probably the biggest asset you can have. That's one part of it. The other one is about this incentivization or the unintended consequences. That's why obviously we do need people that can at least in a global frame try to predict based on their complex models what and how could happen. But again, applying the same principles to the past, again, nobody has asked us or nobody has considered what could be the consequences of bibliometrics and impact factors and everything which has happened in large measure also because of the development of internet and digital technologies. So again, by applying maybe the same line of thinking to the past, probably we can estimate where and what and how things went wrong when in the 90s, if not before, we started relying so heavily on bibliometrics, so citations, impact factors, and all these things. So again, just food for thought. I don't have answers otherwise.
Thank you so much. Yes, no, indeed, this is continuing a very interesting debate that we are having, and that's a bit of the idea of this discussion.
Thanks a lot. Any other comments, colleagues? Alina, please.
Yes, very short, just a comment. Thank you very much for your presentation. I think we ended the...
Alina, you can mute, it's nobody's attending
No,
online.
Eunice.
Ah, there is Eunice.
I don't know.
She has to be there for you to see. So 1 million.
Ah, yes. Okay, go.
Thanks. We just ended a session of mutual learning between institutions which piloted different practices of open science. And then, in a way, some of us, our institution concluded that, yeah, it's a very nice exercise. We're a main funder in Romania. We try to implement a national policy. Still, we don't mandate yet open access because we had, in practice, there were some consequences after we started promoting open access. And to give you an example, we have the APCs, eligible costs in funded projects, and we also award excellent science, meaning that we offer an award to publications in high impact factor journals, and they can be also open access. And we had a situation where when one researcher came with a very large number of publications in open access, so asking an award asking 60 awards, let's say, in 1 year. And that created a huge issue and a scandal at the national level, and some people started booing open science. I'm sure you understand why I'm saying this. And I agree to what you said in the end, that we still need to learn a lot from the different layers of open science, because it's not open access only. And we concluded this in our practice of piloting DMPs. So data management plans aligned with fair data. We learned a lot that it's very challenging, and in practice these DMPs, who checks them? Who has the ability to check them? And we have this kind of debates now from reality. And my conclusion from reality is we want open science because we like the values which open science promotes. but we still lack the capacities, we still don't understand how to do it. And this is a learning process by itself. Still, open science is a learning process in my opinion.
May I say something?
Yes.
In the paper that we are developing with Adrian and others, we do make the point that open science, at least viewed from the perspective of researchers, should have the component of scrutinization of results. And there have been some tendencies, I know a few, again, individual examples, but might generate a norm. There is an Institute of Replication based in Ottawa, Canada, led by Brodier, a researcher there, and they are increasingly collaborating with journals where they actually take up the role of doing what you were saying. When you have the reproducibility package, checking it in full and trying to reproduce the results in systematic ways. So the question is whether it makes sense to increasingly allocate funds to such activities. Who should be bearing the cost? Should it be the funders? Some journals are already doing part of it. So these are important points, and then of course this goes far beyond simple open access. So I do see very much a future, an important future for this kind of systematic scrutinization as part of the open science movement.
Thanks so much.